much more clear what you're doing wrong.
All right, so right here, you have the amount of numbers, and this is the first scan. It scans the amount of numbers. For int I0, I less than amount of numbers, I++, standard for loop. System that at the print line input, it does numbers and stuffs, add, scan, next double. So that's how you're adding to the array list, and you're adding doubles. And this, yes, I'm planning on it. Sorry. Okay, so then do. This is important, and I'll talk about it at the very end. This is an example of how to do a do-while loop without having it risky. Now, you have your variables here. Double sum, median, range, standard deviation, and calculate again is false. This is important also for the end. Here we said calculate again, but we didn't really declare it. Here we declare it false. Because by default, we're not going to calculate it again if it's already been calculated once.
Right, exactly.
So therefore, then it prints out stats, just visual. Here's where it calculates the sum for object I in numbers and stuff. Now this is where some of the advanced concepts come in. Numbers and stuffs is an array list. An array lists take objects. Therefore, if you put a double, if you put an int, if you put a bicycle, it doesn't matter, it's going to make it an object.
Right.
It's going to declassify like that. So therefore, what you use is instance of. Let me highlight it.
And what does instance of do?
Instance of returns a true and false, so you can use it in this statement. What it does is that it checks if it is an instance of that class right here.
Right.
And it's important to note that you don't have to write double dot class, because you can do double dot class or double dot get class with the open close parentheses. No, you don't do either of those. You just do double.
Right.
Like it's shown there, because these won't compile.
Okay.
Yeah, just delete that. So for object I, numbers and stuff, now this is the for each loop we talked about earlier. Then sum plus equals double I. Here you're typecasting I into a double because it still thinks it's an object, even though it is a double.
Right.
Because of the logic of the code I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, so
if
it finds something that
is not a double,
right,
then it won't add it.
It won't add it to some, but
because
if it does find it,
yeah,
it still has to typecast it
into
a double.
Yes, precisely.
Okay.
Precisely. And that follows what I was saying earlier about the two components of a program being logic and syntax. Syntax is correct. Logic is also correct, but even if it wasn't, that is a safety barrier that will protect you.
Okay.
If you accidentally put a bicycle in your numbers and stuff's array list, it won't add it, because you can't add bicycles to numbers. That does make sense. The mean, of course, is mean equals sum divided by numbers and stuff's dot size. So this is the sum we just got right here. And then numbers and stuff's dot size is a standard Arraylist method that calculates the size of it.
Yeah, it's however many elements.
However
now
many
all
elements,
of
of
a
course.
sudden are in
Which-
numbers and stuff.
Which is the definition of a mean.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. Good.
Okay, so then double number array. Here we're initializing a regular array, and you'll see why in a bit. Number array is new double numbers and stuff dot size, right? So we're having that exact amount. So if the user puts 5, it'll be 5, 6, 6, etc.
Okay.
Numbers.
Let me just stop you right there, guys. This is important. Okay. It's very important that you understand that you can go ahead and create an array and specify the size of the array based on the size of an array list. So you don't, in other words, you don't have to put
A static number.
You don't have to put a number, right? An integer. You don't have to put just a plain old integer inside the brackets there for number array.
Right.
You can actually put a calculation.
As long as you're following the program logic, which is part of the first component of the program. If numbers and stuff's dot size wasn't an array list and we're talking about another variable that's a double,
Yeah.
you can't initialize an array with 5.5 parts.
Exactly.
So that's important to know. You have to check your logic there.
Right. Very
Because
good.
you can get a compile error and it's, oh yeah, well, the syntax is fine, but I'm still getting a compile error. Well, that's because your logic is flawed.
Right.
So therefore, numbers and stuff's to-array number array. So it's putting, this is a to-array is a standard array list function, and it's basically just saving this as an array in number array.
Right.
And by default, it's typecasting everything into double.
So that's why you needed to make an array as opposed to.
Yes. And this is really why. Arrays.sort number array.
Right.
Because you cannot get, if you have here 7, 5, 8, 12, 2, 8 is the median, but it's not, because this is not ordered.
Right.
So that's why it's important that you need, and because I was researching and I didn't see exactly a sort for array lists considering they're objects, and so if I'm wrong, please correct me, but that's the
You
way
have
I
to
worked
take
it
an
out.
array list, you have to convert it to an array, and then
You
there's
can put it back.
Right, you
If
can
you
put it
want
back
to.
later, after you finish sorting it.
Of
So, there is a method sort of the arrays class, and that's exactly what he's doing there. He's
Right.
using the sort method.
So
Array.sort.
this is to calculate the median. It's a bit complicated, but it makes sense when you think about it. If number array.length modular division 2 is not 0. So basically, this is saying, let's say number array.length is 3. 3 mod 2 is not 0. So this is checking if it's odd. If it's odd, this is going to be true.
Yeah, true.
So therefore, median is number array. Okay, number array.length minus 1, because if you do dot length, then it's 1 over, because it starts from 0 to 9 instead of 1 to 10.
Good point.
Divided by 2, because that'll give you the smack dab middle.
Right.
If not, else, of course, median is number array. This is how you, number array 2, because you need to remember that with array lists, it's, I'm just going to use AL, arraylist dot get. And this will return your object, get 4.
Right.
But since this is already a regular array, then you have to put it in, let's say you put array, AR, bracket 2, for instance. And that's exactly what this is doing right here. This is the brackets from here to here.
Right.
So, like I'm saying, this is a bit complex, but yeah, this is the only real way to do it.
It's the Java interpreted way of, if you have an odd amount of numbers, the first line of code there will get you the middle number, right? But if you have an even amount of numbers in your array, it'll average the 2 middle numbers.
Right.
So it's the exact definition of median, but
Yeah.
using Java.
Yeah, and then here it calculates the division by 2. So basically, look at the first one. This whole thing is the first number. Let's say you have 4 numbers, right? This is number 2, and this is number 3, divided by 2.
Right.
2 plus 3 divided by 2. So that's just a standard definition of a mean when you have a median, I'm sorry. If you had
When
4
you-
numbers,
when
you
you have
take 2
even
plus
amount of
3
numbers.
divided by 2.
Right.
So then here you have Arraylist stddev equals Arraylist, standard deviation. This is part of calculating the standard deviation. You have stdsum is 0. So then here again you have for each, for object I in numbers and stuffs, right? And actually you should put this right here, but I haven't. So this should also be up there, but for object I in numbers and stuffs, stddev.add math.pow double I minus mean 2. So this is kind of complex, but it's basically doing this. What's it? Y minus this, which is part of getting the standard deviation.
Right.
Which, yeah. So, yeah, doing standard deviation. On the computer, you can't see the actual formula, which is why it looks a bit weird, but it's the same formula, rest assured.
Right.
So then for object I, stddev, if I is instance of double, then the sum of it you add. So this is doing this. This sum is getting this. Yeah, which is also part of it.
It's getting the sum of all of the numbers minus the mean squared.
Yeah. So then the standard deviation follows by saying math.pow, the sum of it, the sum of all those mean minus standard deviation squared.
Partial differences, yeah.
Yes, divided by the total amount, right? And then math.pow 0.5, so that's getting the entire square root of it.
Okay, so what you're doing is you're getting a population standard deviation.
Yes.
You're getting
yes.
the standard deviation for all of the, you're assuming that those numbers represent your entire
The
population.
entire thing, but yes,
Okay.
with an easy fix you could ask, is this a population or whatever?
Okay.
And then all you do is, here numbers the stuff dot size minus 1 if it's the other one.
Right, if
It's
it's
a really easy
if
if
it's a sample.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, it's doing the entire thing here, which is something like u minus that squared 1 over n square root. That's the entire formula.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bit complex, but sadly that's the only way to do it. But yeah, now that that's done, it's a bit, yeah. So therefore, it prints out your ordered list. For double I in number array, system.out print I This is earlier the number array. It's ordered now. It's just going to print out your sum, your mean, your median, and your standard deviation, of course. So the standard deviation part is correct. That does calculate correctly. Now, this is a part where it was failing right here, to put it simply. This is if number array 0, so if the smallest number, because we've already started, if the smallest number is less than the mean minus 2 times the standard deviation, which is what we were doing earlier when you told us u plus minus 2 standard deviation. Yeah. So let me just delete that. Then the value number array 0 appears to be an outlier.
Shouldn't it be if, remember, we want it to be between minus mu minus 2 standard deviation.
And plus.
And mu plus 2 standard deviation.
So that's
shouldn't
the second
there be
one.
an absolute value expression in there somewhere?
There's that's checking if the smallest value is smaller than the accepted standard deviation.
Okay.
The next one I'm talking about, which is the exact same except plus instead of minus.
Okay.
Yeah, it checks
Yeah,
if the
all
highest
I'm
one.
saying is you could have combined it. You could have combined both of those by remembering, for example, that if x is between negative n and n, that's the same thing as saying the absolute value of x.
Right, but the important part is that you can't check which one triggered it. Let's say I have if x is 0 or if a is 2. A is b, sorry. Let's just ignore a, b, right? If x is 0 or a is b, then it will run it. So therefore I can't say if this was because of that, then do this. Else if this was because of that.
Okay.
Yeah, so
that's why you split it up.
That's why, yes, that's the logic behind that.
Okay.
Let me just erase it actually because I have a lot. Oh, sorry. It's not erasing.
Not a problem.
Right. So therefore, yeah, it just does that. No or yes. Simple user prompt. Int decision is scan the next thing. You're just getting the feedback from the user. If the decision is 1, then you do this. If it's nothing, then no, then 0, then it doesn't matter. So if the decision is 1, calculate again is true. This is the variable that we set up top here. The variable that's going to be checked in the do while loop. This is going to check if you need to calculate it again because this could be at the very bottom, but basically what it does is that for int I is 0, I is less than numbers and stuff dot size, I plus plus. Because you can't, when you're doing it like this, you can't use for each loops with number arrays like you told us in class. Numbers and stuffs dot get I, right? If this value of I, because it's going to be looping, is number array 0, because this is the value that's wrong, which is right here. So then numbers and stuffs remove I. It's going to check through the entire list, and if there is any instance of 6, and let's say 6 is your outlier, it's going to remove all the 6s. Right, you could do this for only one 6, but that's kind of against the point. Same right here, number array, it's just the same thing, except that your if statements are a bit different. If it's greater than mean plus 2 times standard deviation. Now this is where the do while loop comes in. Once you've run it once, if the decision is not 1, sorry, that works. If the decision is not 1, then this calculate again will never run, and it stays as false. So then when it runs once, it's going to say while calculate again is true. If it hasn't removed any numbers, right? Because it has to remove numbers by logic. Because you can't say, oh yeah, I have an outlier, but then I don't have an outlier in the original. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
So therefore, this was never run, and while calculate again is false. So therefore, it's not going to run it again.
Okay.
Instead, if it is true, then it is going to run it again, and so forth.
Right.
This is where the do while come loops.
Wow. Okay, I mean, Sebastian, this is outstanding. I mean,
Thank you, Mr. L.
It looks like you understand perfectly how this program works. There's only one question I have, and how would you, if you could fix the issue with the outlier not being removed,
Right.
what do you feel would have to be done in order to do that?
Well, the thing that comes to mind.
Could it go back to the do while?
Hmm?
Could it go back to the issue of the fact that you're using a do while?
No. It's all entirely right here. If this. These are the if statements that control everything. The do while is just checking if this is true.
Right.
So if this fails, then we haven't even gotten here. So by troubleshooting logic, then this can't be.
Right.
So what I would say is maybe remove the 2, but I think Darian has been waiting all this time to offer a solution.
Darian.
So
Can you offer some insight?
No, I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
Sure.
First, is number array just, can you go back up?
Sure.
Like, is number array the same as numbers and stuff, except as an array
Yes,
instead of an array list?
precisely.
Exactly the same?
Precisely, yes.
Well then,
Except then it's going to sort it.
yeah, well then, I hate to burst the bubble here, but the current way that the whole program is set up renders the entire use of an array list pointless. Because if you go back to the original beginning, you ask them for
Right.
the length of the array list of the numbers they're going to input, instead of just letting them input numbers continuously until they maybe have a stop count to an array.
I think what Sebastian was trying
So
to do, I think what he was trying to do was he was trying to come up with a way of using any array list, regardless of whether you populated it with doubles or not.
Yes, precisely. You can do integers, and basically,
Oh,
instead
I
here,
think that was the point of it.
yeah,
that was the point.
yes,
of the
that's the
array
point of
list.
it. I just didn't
See, I
implement
didn't
it.
get that.
I just, yeah, I could put if I is instance of double, or if I is instance of integer, or if I is instance of float.
Exactly.
I just, by logic, I didn't need to do that.
Wait, couldn't you just
Okay.
input integers into a double sort of list?
You can.
Ask the question, Al?
Okay.
Right.
Wait, can't you just input integers into a double?
Right, you can't. So, I mean, you could typecast it into a double, I guess.
Right.
Well then.
Yeah.
Alright.
Double's the highest precision standard you have, so
But
you're
what if
losing.
you're dealing with things other than integers or doubles?
So
What if you're dealing with bicycles?
This thing works with stuff that is integers or doubles.
Exactly.
It's a safety net.
That's the point. That's the
It's a
point
safety
of
net, yeah.
Oh, wait,
using
wait,
it.
it doesn't actually like sort them and stuff, it just like, it just doesn't run if...
It doesn't run, yes,
Right.
because
Oh,
this is
okay,
going to be
that's-
false. If I is not an instance of double, like it says in the text, then it's not going to run, and it's
Right.
not going to add it to the sum.
It was a very subtle point, but I'm glad we're discussing
Yes,
it.
precisely, because that's one of the advanced concepts we haven't talked about, really, so
Yeah.
I'm glad people brought it up.
Alright.
Yeah, because you can't typecast a bicycle into a double.
Right.
It'll give you
Right.
some weird stuff. It'll give you like 0 or -1 or an error.
Yeah,
One of
right.
the three.
Right.
So we could test it out again. If any of you have an idea for this, I'm just going to remove the 2 times and see what happens. Really, that's all I really wanted to say. If I just want to see, because I had some numbers that actually got it working, because I've seen that prompt, but
Right.
I don't know how I did it.
But I'm not sure who you're in, however, though.
So let's say 6 maybe. Okay. 1.01, 1.00, 1.02, 1.03. We're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so 1.01 again. Let's try.
72.
Sure, 72, I guess. That's kind of ridiculous. There we go.
Yeah.
Standard deviation.
There you go.
The value 72 appears to be an outlier. Would you like to remove this value?
Yes, that's
So if we click no, then this will never be run, and calculate again was false, so therefore it's not going to run again.
Yeah.
But considering we are going to press yes, it's going to set it to true, and it's going to run again, giving you apparently another outlier, strangely enough. But yeah, that's only with these 2. That's, yeah. Because I mentioned earlier, really briefly,
Yeah.
but this is food for thought for people at home also.
Oh yeah.
It's hard to prove a system wrong within the system.
Right.
So, like in the Matrix, you cannot prove the Matrix is non-real when you're in it.
Right.
It's like a dream. You cannot prove a dream wrong when you're inside the dream because everything makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, sure, there's a tuna doing boxing with a trout
Right.
in the middle of a boxing rink with underpants. Yeah, that totally makes
I
sense.
bet money on that fight. Don't.
I know, right? So you cannot. But that's only with these 2. You know, if anybody here has ideas about this, then please
Okay.
feel to
I'm
say
gonna
anything.
I'll post this video. Listen, guys. I'll post this video on the screencast on the class webpage, and I will offer extra credit for anybody that could potentially come up with a solution.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Precisely.
Sebastian was able to fix the problem partially. The program recognized that 72 was an outlier, but unfortunately, once it removes the 72, then it starts
Oh,
to
no.
go back and realize.
Mr. Rowe, but technically it is correct. Because look at it. The mean is 1.01, somewhat, right? And the standard deviation is 0.1. So 1.01 minus 0.1 is 1.0. And so technically, as weird as it sounds, it is it. The only thing is that it's within 1 standard deviation where it should be
Instead of
within
2.
2.
That's when you remove the 2. That's
Precisely.
right.
You could do okay, if this is the second time we're looping it, then only remove 2 standard deviations.
Yeah.
Something like that. It's it's weird like that, but it technically makes sense.
Right, it makes sense if you're only doing one standard deviation, right?
Yes.
But
you want 2 or 3 technically.
well, I just wanted to remove the 72 and then recalculate the standard deviation,
And this is-
then not give you any other value
Of
that
course, of
appears
course.
to be an outlier.
Right, of course, but
At least with this data.
yeah, of course. Also, it also works for lower values and higher values. The reason why you want that, because you can also do it if it's the second time looping, then you just do these cannot run by default,
Yeah, right.
which is another easy if statement.
Right.
But basically, yeah, you just click no right here. I'll just show you guys that it does not cause a problem with the do while loop. This is a good opportunity to show that.
Okay.
0, boom, program ends. Wait, no. There you go, program ends.
There you go.
Yeah, that was weird. I don't know.
Alright, yeah.
So yeah,
Okay. All right, no, this is outstanding.
thank you.
Outstanding. Guys, listen.
Does anyone have any questions?
Any final questions or comments?
There is some
So you
pretty
can post
complex.
this on-
I'm gonna post this right now. Well, I have to encode it. After I encode it, I'll upload it to Vimeo or YouTube, and
And
then
the code
I will
itself?
post this entire screencast on the class webpage.
Okay.
Look at the code, extra credit, whoever can offer solutions.
Right.
Because
And then we'll revisit.
do you mind if you post the code itself so we can modify the code directly?
Sebastian, it's up to you.
Sure. Standard GNU license. Sure.
Okay. All right, guys. Thank you,
Just
Sebastian.
yeah. That implies what's it?